Welcome. This is the virtual interview. I am your coach, Rosa Montanaro, and I'm looking forward to sharing this information with you. We're going to look at how people interview nowadays very commonly at this time, and that's going to be over the phone, Skype, Zoom, Facebook, virtually. It's going to be done virtually. A lot of it will be done virtually. So what we're doing is we're going to take the skills that we do in person, and I'm just going to help you tweak them so that you are prepared for this virtual interview. And a really simple agenda for you. I don't have, it's not crazy, it's simple. We're going to prepare what to do to prepare for the interview, how to answer some of these questions, how to mentally prepare for that, and then following up. It is the same as a typical interview. The difference is it's done virtually, Skype, Zoom, Facebook, phone, conference call, you name it, it could be done any of those ways. And it's very common. I want to say I've heard as many as 100%, but I've heard people say 80% typically will be done virtually now for a long time, until they get really close to the deciding person, and then maybe they'll have you come in. But this is going to be the way it is for a while. So let's jump in. Let's get started. And for those of you who haven't worked with me yet, I'm actually a certified success coach, but certified in success coaching since 1996, worked in the career management field the last 17 years. I've been a wellness coach for the bulk of 25 years, maybe even longer. And we are kind of blending all this together to help you get a healthy mind, healthy body, healthy career path, right? All of it, it needs to be, in the best optimal place. And so we're going to just help prepare you for that. So the virtual interview itself, things you want to start off by doing is this is technology based. Very important that you get comfortable with the technology. That means you have to create the account for the technology. If it's a Zoom account, create the account before you need it. Download it on your, on your phone or whatever, on your smartphone, or even desktop if needed, iPad, all that works. And then you need to play with the technology. You got to get a little comfortable with it. So set up some test runs. Ask a couple friends if you can call them. I remember the first time I had a Skype interview, it was for a radio show, and I believe it was just the phone in, but I wasn't sure, and so I tested it out the night before. I downloaded the one he said to do. I used all the settings he said to use, and then I called a friend, and we had a conversation. He said he could hear me fine, and the next day it went off beautifully, like very nicely. Don't wait till the last minute on these things. We need to look and research where we're going, who we're talking to. You want to know, what is this company? What are their job requirements? Learn about the company itself, just like you would anyway, but also know what's important to you, because you're going to have this little barrier now, the screen, and you may or may not be comfortable in front of a camera, and you have to be willing to practice this so that you sound authentic and you speak about your competencies with a level of comfort and confidence. And so that takes a little practice and knowing what's important to you. If this job would be perfect for you in these 3 ways, you have to articulate that. And so you want to say, if you're overqualified, the reason this is such a great opportunity for me, because they may be concerned you're overqualified, could be, and for you, is I have a vast amount of experience that I've been trained to do in so many circumstances, and I know I can benefit you and help you reach your goals. I'm at a point in my career now where it's more important to me to stay local than it is to travel. And I know to have the job I used to have, if I was willing to travel, yeah, that would come with a different pay grade. This one though, I'm really looking forward to something new. I'm prepared for this adjustment and I'm excited to start it. Well, now you just answered a lot of their smoke screens in their mind, right? You're understanding what's important to you without totally giving them all the information. You're saying, here's why I want to work in a job that I'm overqualified for, or that maybe one would think I wouldn't want to go back to because I'd already done that. And it's nice to know really clearly what's important to you. Now, you have to take care of your resume, your cover letter. You might have updated it since then. You want to be comfortable even uploading it in technology, emailing it in advance. There's ways to upload a file. You want to be able to know how to do that, or even share your screen if you have a presentation you need to give. Those are things that are important that some people have to do. Practice this 45-second introduction. I'll show it to you. And then update your LinkedIn so it's appropriate to the job that you're interested in. You might even Google yourself, frankly, and see what comes up under images and also in the news articles, just to see if there's any images from you from Facebook or something that you need to clean up a little bit or get rid of. Now, the whole interview process itself is going to be very much like a typical interview, right? They're going to ask you questions. You're going to answer the questions. We're going to see if you're a good match for my competencies. Do you match with the people we'll be working with within the environment we've created? You need to know the same thing. Here's the differences. The difference is right now you see what's behind me. Now for you, I left everything behind me, but I move some of these things around at times. It depends on who I'm talking to. If this were an interview, I try to not have too much on the mantle behind me. I would probably prefer a blank wall. And you just have to be mindful of what's around you. I realized earlier that when I did a Facebook Live that I had the screen tilted very low. And so when the screen was tilted low, and I don't know if you could see that, there's a picture my husband's going to hang for me laying on the floor. And I was like, oh my, I didn't want that to show up on this Facebook Live. Now I did that for my job. So that's why it's even more important that we're really aware of what's showing up in the picture. So do a mock run, videotape something, see how you look. You know, what's around you right now. I have all these little things on my wall, positive affirmations, things like that. But I'm going to focus on you. It's too easy to focus on the photo of ourselves, the video. You want to focus on the camera. So you can see my eyes dart to look at me. How is my hair straight? You know, all that stuff. You don't want to do that. You want to keep looking at the camera. You want to make sure you're dressed appropriately. Now, this shirt is probably not a shirt I'd wear for an interview, but it's a shirt that I can wear for any time I'm videotaping with people. I just throw a jacket over it. Throw a jacket over it, it looks fine. But make sure, waist up, you're dressed appropriate. If you're the kind of person who gets more energy out of standing, then go ahead and stand if you want to talk. You just have to put your camera a lot higher. Very common that people stand. But do get used to making sure that it's prompted properly. Making sure your body language is confident and you pretend you are looking at this person, that they're right here in front of you and you have a good eye contact with them. Now, one thing that takes time is to get the lighting right and the sound. So typically I test the sound before I do this, and I apologize that I didn't, but I always do before I go live. And so I will check my microphone. So many times I've tried to record something and never got recorded. You got to check all that out. So I know, because I went live already, that everything's working just fine. But also natural light, which is coming from my window, natural lighting is best for us. So whenever you can get natural lighting, that's ideal. Try to face the light. Don't let the light behind you. Now, on another side of this, you want to ask questions and have questions ready that you can ask them. Don't wait till they say, do you have anything you want to ask me? No, no, no. Let them, they ask you a question, answer the question, have a conversation. You answer the question, maybe you ask a question. I'm just curious. I was wondering, or that reminds me, I have a question. Those are soft ways to ask a question. Questions are allowing you to demonstrate your subject matter expertise as well as your ability to show that you're a good return on their investment. When somebody says, okay, tell me about a time, let's say that you had to teach workshops and they were done remotely. Great. I'd be happy to tell you about a time where I did that. It was right when the pandemic hit. We used Zoom. I did over 30 classes. We engaged over 300 individuals, and I found to be very successful, very comfortable in technology. But now I'm curious. How often do you utilize technology for remote training? How much remote training do you provide? What is your favorite platform? How do you feel about the Zoom platform? How do you feel about WebEx? So if you ask a simple question, they'll say, oh, good. This person's used these platforms before, so they're not sounding like a know-it-all. I'm asking, how do you feel about this? What are the pros and cons? I know what the pros and cons are of a Zoom versus a WebEx, right? So I can say to myself, at least from my experience, here's what I like it in this situation. Here's what I like it in that situation. What are your thoughts? Or how do you approach that? By having this kind of conversation, you engage them in knowing that they can trust you with their baby. Their business is their baby. And you're telling them, on my watch, your baby's going to be just fine. In the way I answer the questions, and also in the nature of the questions I ask you, so that you can see that I'm doing my research, I'm going to do fine by you. Always focus on what their needs are, which is another reason we have to ask questions. Because I want to know from you, if I was fortunate enough to be hired here on Monday, what would my top priorities be for this job? Always ask questions like that. What was it about my resume that captured your attention? I'm just curious. What do you see as the best opportunities for us moving forward? For us. Throw that in there, right? Not for you, for us. When you can clarify what they're looking for specifically from you, then you can tweak your answers to the questions to match that so they can see that you fit in. I think that's a very powerful tool, okay? You find out what they need. Then before you go into this full-blown interview, you tweak your answers to demonstrate that you match what they need. Very important. I would encourage you to answer questions in a concise format, especially when you're doing something virtually. People don't have the attention span that they have even in person. So you have to be very clear, very concise. I would practice that word, concise. Now, always get the name and the contact information of the individuals that you'll be talking to, because people disconnect, people get kicked out of Zoom accounts, internet's changing, get disruptive. Always get a name and a contact information for the actual conversation and even after the conversation to follow up with. There's a fortune in the follow-up. Make sure you follow up. Always ask, how would you like me to follow up? And do it that way. I've been a recruiting coordinator, so you can trust me on this. And when someone said, how do you want me to follow up? And I say, email me. I prefer email. And they call me 3 times. That tells me something. That tells me they don't follow directions and they really didn't respect what I said. Now, I understand it might mean that it's eager to someone else. It might mean it's showing a good sign of interest to someone else. But if you asked me how I prefer it and I told you, and you still didn't follow that method, you either weren't listening or this isn't valuable enough to you. And for me, communication and listening is a high value. So, and also the agreements that we make. I value agreements. I value boundaries. And so if someone shows me that they're not respecting a boundary or they're just putting it aside, and I've had this happen where someone will call me continuously every day, multiple times a day. When I said to them, we'll follow up on email. Now, the first time I can understand, but the second, third time, now it's becoming a little overwhelming, and now I'm just questioning whether or not you're going to be this way in other projects that we do. Are you not going to notice the follow-up method? Are you going to call me until I call you back? Is this something I want on my team, or is this just par for the course? Depends on what you do. Following up is really important, especially in the way that you've been asked to follow up. So let's talk about how you answer these questions. You're going to be asked a lot of questions. You're going to ask questions. It's a conversation. First one they're going to ask is probably, tell me about yourself. It's an icebreaker, very common. They're not asking for your life story. Nobody wants to hear the confessions of what you've done and why. Nobody wants to hear a really long story, to be honest with you. Here's what I want you to think of it. I want you to think of it this way. When I say, tell me about yourself, you know what I'm asking you? I'm asking you, why are you sitting in front of me right now? If I'm looking at your resume, I don't have a resume in front of me. If I'm looking at your resume and I see, wow, you're overqualified, yet you're sitting here in front of me. I'm curious, why are you here in front of me right now? And so it could be a little bit about your professional background with your experience and how it lends itself well to this particular job. So if someone said, now the introduction is your name, I'm Rosa Montanaro, but why, tell me a little bit about yourself. Well, I'm a professional trainer and my experience has predominantly been in the wellness industry as well as career management. My background includes working with individuals in all aspects of, career management, outplacement, and even entrepreneurship, which is really kind of fun. So what I'm hoping to do is use my strengths that I learned from my previous role, complementing HR, where I was part of outreach and recruiting and helping them source talent. And I'm hoping to use that with your organization to be part of your recruitment team. Now, I could probably polish that a little bit better, but that's kind of a general idea of how I might show, okay, I did this, but now I'm coming over here. And I'm sort of making my way over. And so you have to practice it over and over again. I might even throw in there, I'm a trainer, but I've also been a recruiting coordinator. My experience has been in career management for the good part of, a decade. And I have a lot of experience with people in all aspects of their career search, working with thousands of them. And one of my favorite parts is recruiting and being a recruiting coordinator, helping to onboard people. When I saw this opportunity to be a recruiting coordinator, I thought that was one of the happiest gigs I've had in my whole career, and I'm ready to go back to that. I know I can help you find good people, talent to put in your organization, and then flip it around. So let me ask you, what was it about my resume that caught your attention? I'm just curious. If you can get comfortable with that kind of conversation, you will have a far better interview, and you'll leave a lasting impression with people. So you're going to practice that introduction over and over and over again. You're going to repeat it over and over again to become second nature to you. And then you're going to practice how you answer behavioral-based questions. Behavioral-based questions are any question, but behavioral-based questions are things like, tell me about a time. Tell me about a time where you had to have a conversation with a coworker and it was not going the way you planned. Tell me about a time where you had a disagreement with someone. Those kind of, any kind of question, tell me about a time. And they're usually big buckets. Or stress, how do you handle stress? And how do you handle the authority? And where are you in a team player, as far as how are you as a team player? And tell me about something technical about yourself. How about when something with change occurs, probably working from home? All those kinds of buckets will be questions you could very well be asked. And they're asking, how does your mind work? How do you process information? And they don't want you to give them, again, your life story. I have some rules around how you answer these questions. I have some real good guidelines for you. First, you're going to tell a story. Stories leave impressions in people's brains, and you need to leave an impact in someone's brain. So you're going to tell a story. Second of all, you're going to anticipate every question they could possibly ask you, and you're going to practice answering these questions. But you're going to practice answering the question in a 2-minute time frame. 2 minutes. Do not exceed 2 minutes to answer any single question. That's going to be your challenge. My challenge to you is get used to answering a question, telling a story in 2 minutes. How do you do that? You break it down into this little format we have for you. You notice star, you notice soar, all kinds of ways. It's what was the situation? What kind of challenge or task did you have in front of you? Or obstacle? What action did you take? And what was the result? That's simple. It's a very simple guideline. Here's a situation, here's a challenge or a task or an obstacle, here's the steps I took, here was the result. And you practice, practice, practice that way of answering a question until it becomes second nature to you. Now I'm going to leave another layer for you. I'm very direct in my communication. I prefer direct communication myself. I've done lots of interviews, lots of mock interviews. I've conducted many, many. And I can tell you it's easy to lose track of what the person's talking about. So we're going to add another layer. You're going to tell a story. And with that story, the first thing you're going to do, it's within 2 minutes, you're going to answer the question. So they're going to say, tell me about a time where you had a disagreement with someone at work. Honestly, I probably would say, I don't have disagreements very often at work with individuals. But you have to have a story in place. Tell me about a time you had a disagreement, or hypothetically think of something. So first thing I would say, if that was the question I was going to demo for you, is, well, to be honest with you, I don't typically have disagreements with my coworkers. So I answer the question directly. But if I had to think of anything close to it or hypothetically what I would do, so I'd go right into answering those. Situation was, there was a point where I was teaching a workshop and my coworker was teaching a workshop, and we somehow got our wires crossed and we thought we were the lead on the same workshop and we weren't. And so the Challenge, that was a little bit of a challenge because we were both preparing for something different than what the other one expected. The action steps we took were to have, I had some clarifications and conversation and clarified. Actually, to be honest with you, I deferred and said, you do what part you want. I will do what's left. No problem. Let's fine tune this and clarify who does what. And also, the result was we had a fantastic workshop. Nobody knew that was going on, which really happens very quickly before the workshop. And as a result, by the way, I clarified that we've created a process moving forward so that we avoid that from happening again. So typically, I rarely get into disagreements with my coworkers, and if something were to be misinterpreted it would probably just be a communication breakdown, and I'm really good at fixing those and trying to intercept that and making sure we're on the same page. That's a quick example. I just demoed it. 2 minutes. I answered the question. I gave you a story. I answered the question, and I told you, the result right before I answered. And try to make it spin it so things turned out really great, right? And here's the beautiful thing about a story. That same story, now that's an actual story. And I didn't really think about it prior to right now because there's usually another story I share. But for some reason, that story came in and I went with it for you. But that story could serve me in a lot of ways. That story could serve you in a lot of ways. If you think about a story you have, think about all the questions you could possibly be asked and how that story could help you in that question so that you don't have to memorize 100 stories. Memorize 20 good stories, and 20 good stories have like 5 components to them. And so if you never get asked, tell me about a time you had a disagreement with your coworker, you could still use the story to demonstrate one of the aspects of it. So if someone said, how do you handle stress? Can you tell me about a time you had a very stressful situation at work? Sure, I actually am very good at handling stress. I'd love to tell you about that. I've had to prove it a number of times. One situation would be, if I were to think of it at the top of my head, is when I had a coworker. We thought we were teaching the same material. They got a little frustrated because they prepared for something and then was asking me to adjust what I was prepared to do, which actually I can adjust very quickly. So even though that could have been an obstacle for someone else, for me, it was just a matter of having a conversation, clarifying what they want from me, and jotting down a couple things. And we tag teamed it, went beautifully well. We even got great evaluations from our class, and we talked about next time how we could avoid that happening again. But I really do deal well with stress, I have to say, in the workplace. So there's your another example. Same situation, different slant. So this is going to be a really good tool for you. Get a sheet of paper, get a notebook, get a folder, write down all your questions you might be asked, practice this format with them, practice saying them. And when you go in for your, the beautiful part about virtual interview is you can have your questions right here. You can say, what, I jotted down some questions. Like I have a notebook right here. I jotted down a few questions. Do you mind if I just make sure I asked you all of them? Do you mind if I take notes while we talk? It's a little more finessing in this situation. The other thing I would be doing is putting Post-it notes all over my monitor. I'd have one by the eyepiece. I'd have one around here. As a matter of fact, when I went live this morning, I literally took my notebook with my notes and I hung it over the side of my monitor because nobody would see it. And that was right in front of me so I could stay on task. So you could put these notes all over your monitor to just jog your memory. Okay, that's how we answer questions. Now you're going to be asked all kinds of questions. I want you to just look at the top questions, prepare for them, and make a list of questions you don't like to be asked. And prepare for those and practice that format. So why did you leave your last job? Well, you don't want to say they fired me. First of all, if you're getting unemployment, they probably didn't because termination usually doesn't result in UI benefits. I don't work for the Department of Labor, but that much I know. And you want to make it sound like it's not your fault. Nowadays, it's easy. We had a global crisis. We had a pandemic, and we were working remotely. I was furloughed for 3 weeks. And unfortunately, my organization lost a big contract, and my job was impacted, along with 17 others. Something that simple, not my fault. If you did something, and it was, unfortunately, There was a policy that I violated without realizing it. I was completely unaware that that was something that was occurring. And maybe it was I brought my phone on the shop floor and I wasn't supposed to do that. And in hindsight's 2020, if I could do it over again, I certainly would not have done that. It was a complete oversight. But company policies are company policies. And so I have to respect that. My boss was sorry to see me go. Everybody was sorry to see me go. I'll never do it again. That I can guarantee. Now, that person has, okay, you're telling me the truth. I've seen people lose their jobs for that. But try not to make it sound like it's your fault. It's easier if you just state the facts. This is the company policy. Here's the result. I had 7 years of great work history with them. Management changed. What the needs were on the team changed. Unfortunately, my job was impacted. That's all. Just say it that way. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? This is probably one of my least favorite questions because, we all have different goals. And I can't say in 5 years I want to be fully, employed full-time. Maybe I want to be a full-time grandma, stay-at-home grandma. And so people say to me, I'm getting ready to retire. I'm doing this for 3 years. How do I answer that question? I don't want to be there for 5 years. You don't know for sure, right? You might actually like it there and you might decide you want to be there more than 5 years. And they really want to see how you answer the question. How do you see yourself? What is your plan? Are you a flight risk? I would say something very truthful because integrity is important to me as well. I'd say, my value is making a difference in individuals' lives. And so I get to do that in my job. And if it's here, that would be great. If it's elsewhere, I will still be making a positive impact in people's lives in 5 years, whether it's teaching workshops live or doing it in my everyday life. Hopefully it'll be here, but if it's not, I promise I'll still be making a difference in people's lives in 5 years. So something like that. What's important to you? What's important to me is I do a great job and I, deliver more than my return on investments is phenomenal. I give more than I take, and I plan on still being able to do that in 5 years. Something that simple. We don't say I want your job, and we don't say I want to be retired. What is your greatest strength? This is always a fun question to ask. Be aware of your strengths. Don't be afraid of speaking up. You have strengths. You need to communicate your competencies. You need to do it comfortably. You need to do it with confidence. And I want you to remember that. So what is one of your biggest strengths? And be honest about it. Think about what is making you a good return on your investment. You do enough of those stories to practice for your interview, and you'll start to see your strengths. And often it has not as much to do with the job. It might be, I'll give you one that I like to use because I work with individuals much younger than me. One of my greatest strengths is that I'm mature in my way of thinking, how I make decisions. I'm youthful in my approach and up to date with technology. One of my biggest strengths is I work extremely well with all the generations. We have 5 generations in the workplace, and I really, really love working with all the generations. As a matter of fact, I love to learn from people who've been there seasoned longer than me. And if somebody wants to learn from me, I'm the first one to tell them, be their cheerleader and help them in any way I can. I am a huge resource to the people I work with because I'm not going to be sitting there getting involved in the drama in the workplace. I'm much more mature than that, and yet I'm really up to date in everything I do, and I really get a kick out of being side by side with my coworkers. That one has served me well, guys. I will tell you. People are looking for your ability to play nice in the sandbox, to not be resentful about where you're going, and also that you can stay in your lane to an extent and not try to jump over and teach them how to do their job. People don't want you to come in and take over, unless that's what you're being hired for. If they want someone who's self-directed, that could be your strength. I'm self-directed. Once you tell me what you do, what the parameters are, what the goals are, what the expectations are, I'm going to make sure I deliver it as one of my strengths. One of the weaknesses is not going to be perfectionism. Don't say that. Perfectionism is high maintenance. You want to say, maybe I have a high standard for myself, but I also know that everyone has their own standard for themselves. So one of the things I've learned about over the years is I don't hold people to my standard. I hold myself to my standard. In the past, I might have paid attention to that. Now I don't. And I probably wouldn't even go down that route for a weakness. I pick a weakness that doesn't interfere with my ability to do the job. So are you never using Excel? You know what? One of my weaknesses is I need to get better at Excel. I actually was afraid of it for a while, but now I've been taking a tutorial on it and I'm getting much better at it. Now I know I probably it won't affect me with what I do here because I am learning a lot about Excel, but it's probably what I would have considered at one time to be one of my bigger weaknesses that I've learned from this job search that I need to do better at. So that could be another one. If you don't get in front of groups, you could say public speaking is one of the things that I really have a rough time with, but I've gotten a lot better at it since we've had to go virtual. So those are kind of the ways you would answer those questions. It's not a weakness to them, it's just a weakness to you, and you always spin it in a positive way, always within that 2-minute time frame. Salary requirements, this one's going to get you. Now, first layer is really, we don't talk about salary until an offer's been made, but I know people ask you, what are your salary expectations? What are your salary requirements? I have a couple ways I want you to answer this question. First, I want you to give this a try. I'm not making a decision based on money alone. It's about the entire compensation package. I'd really like to move forward with this and, explore more about what this job's about. So don't necessarily jump in answering the question. If they say, well, yeah, but we see how much you made before. I'm gonna be honest with you. You worked at Xerox for 30 years. This job only requires 3 years. You're already out of my budget range. I'm probably gonna push you a little harder. So I need to know a range. But you don't necessarily want to give a number, because if you tell them how much you made, I'm gonna be like, we don't make that much here. We don't want you to do that. So the next layer could be, well, I realize this job is different than the job I previously had. And I'll be honest with you, I'm very fortunate. I was compensated very well. I had a great career. I couldn't ask for a better, opportunity. And I also now am ready for a change. With that change comes a whole different career path, and I'm ready for that. All I'm looking at is fair and equitable wage. I'm prepared for this transition, and I'm looking forward to it. So I would love to continue to talk more about this. That often works. Often works. Now, another little flip could be, well, I'm just curious, what would you say would be the range that you would be paying for a role like this with someone with my experience? See, their issue isn't that you have experience, it's that they didn't budget for someone with your experience. The budget's for the job they created, not the person you are. And so sometimes you've got to figure out what that budget is. And they're a little more gun shy because enough people came before you to say, how dare you offer me that little bit of money, even though it might have been a great offer to someone else. But they're comparing it to 30 years in a Fortune 500 company where they got raises along the way to something that's only been around for 2 years, and it might be half of what you were making. And if that truly is okay with you, you want to be able to articulate something like, at this point in my career, I'm not making a decision based on money alone. I'm making a decision based on quality of life, about job satisfaction, and about making a contribution with my skills. I know there'll be a change in salary. I'm prepared for that. I really haven't done all my research to talk about exactly what that number might look like, but I know I'm very flexible. So I would love, if you want to tell me what you're thinking, we could, but I would rather wait until we know we're a good match. And that's how I would go at it. Now, bottom line, they push you. I want a range. You got to tell me something. You give a big range, like $20,000 range. It could go from this all the way to that, depending on what are the requirements? What do they expect from you? It's all, kind of, you have to weigh it out. What's important to you? We talk about that in the negotiating workshop, is measuring all that out. So you want to practice this because it gets hard. I'm very comfortable saying, I'm not comfortable talking about money, but I know we have to. I do that. I say, it's my least favorite topic to talk about. I'm not very good at it. I don't particularly like talking about money, but I know we have to. So I have to ask. I just put it right out there, and people go, oh, okay. And when you're authentic, they really do respond well. I want you to be authentic. I talked about taking good notes. Write down some of the answers to the questions they might ask you. What kind of questions do you have, and how do they want to follow up? We started off with that. really important that you follow up the way they want you to. What is it about this position that you want to follow up with in your thank you note, right? What are their specific needs and priorities? Is there anything you should know about the team dynamics? You know, your specific role. I've had places where I've worked where you're immersed in a team and you can't make a move without everybody saying, giving consensus, all the way to like, I'm flying solo. And I'm cool with the second, really, the consensus thing. I can do it, but to be honest with you, it's my nature to want to just make decisions and ask for forgiveness and not permission. Now, it's my nature is one of my other ways to answer a question. Tell me about a time you had to do this. I would say, what's my nature to, that's a good one for weakness. Tell me about one of your weaknesses. It's my nature to want to move things along at a fast pace. What I've learned though in this job, when I worked with at-risk youth, is they don't move at the same pace I move. And even though I know I can help them and get them, if they do what I said, they'd be better off. I had to learn to be patient and let them experience their own consequences. As difficult as it is, that's probably one of my bigger weaknesses, but I've learned to do it. And I'm there for them when they're ready. So it's my nature is a really good conversation to have with somebody. So how are you in this type of team? Well, it's my nature to pick up the ball and run with it, but I also know that there's a lot of times where someone else needs to pick up the ball, let them run, let them be in the spotlight. I'm completely fine with that. Always get the name and contact information and the title of the person, because people do move around or disconnect, and we want to stay in touch with the right person. Now, I always say this, the fortune's in the follow-up. The fortune is in the follow-up. And so you always follow up the way they told you to, using the technology they told you to, following the time frame. When should I expect to hear back from you? How would you like me to follow up at that time? Is it okay if in 2 weeks I call you then, since phone is good? Is it okay if we connect on LinkedIn? You could follow them on LinkedIn, follow them on Twitter, follow their announcements, shoot them a message when something good happens. Congratulations, you got that contract. That's awesome. You must be excited. Maybe I've even done things where I've read articles that pertain to something I've talked about in an interview, and I've sent it later to say, this reminded me of what we were talking about. Here's a great example of virtual classroom, being utilized for individuals that are remotely located, and also hiring individuals in other time zones, or some maybe goofy conversation we may have had that I think, wow, this is unique. It shows I pay attention. And periodically, maybe every week or two, I'm just checking for the status of the job once they gave you the time frame. If they said, we're not making a decision until June 20th, well, then I'm not calling before June 20th. I will wait till June 20th, and I'll check in with them. But I will send out a thank you note the day of that interview. Within 24 hours, send out a thank you note. I like handwritten notes. I like to specifically say what it is that I liked about this interview, or how I can be a good return for you. If there's a panel interview, get everyone involved. When you do this virtually, there can be a panel. You're going to want to get everyone's name from the HR person. You're going to ask, can I get everyone's name in the chat just to be safe? I want to make sure I don't miss anyone. You can email people a thank you, but I would always follow up with a handwritten. And always, offer to be of service. How can you help them? Here's how I can see us working together in the future. Here's how I look forward. If I could be of any other additional support to you, please let me know. And of course, you're always going to say thank you. I hope this was helpful. I hope this was a quick overview of a virtual interview. Before you wrap up and say goodbye to everybody, make sure you got their contact information. If you need to copy and paste it in the chat, go ahead and do it, and paste it into your email or wherever, your notepad, if you have that open. If you have portfolios or anything online you want to demonstrate, you could either put those links in the chat, or you could share your screen. That's up to you. It depends on what you're interviewing for. It's fine to ask for feedback. You could say, this is new for me, and I just was wondering what feedback you can give me so I can improve on this. And no judgment, it's just curious. And you want to take that in so that you can always improve. Make notes every time you do this and say, how can I improve on this? I'm going to tell you this. We're in a whole new era, guys. This whole thing about talking and communicating on Zoom and Skype and anything else, any other platform, it's new for everyone. And they're giving us a huge buy because of it. Gone are the days you have to be perfectly polished. I want you to be prepared. I want you to know your content. But I made 30 mistakes while I talked today, and I just kept going. The old Rosa, that 90s educated Rosa, where we did training in the 90s, I would have stopped, re-recorded, stopped, re-recorded. This would have taken me days and days to do. I would have gotten completely hung up on every error I made, every time I didn't enunciate properly, and I would have gotten stuck there. But you know what I've learned about where we're at right now? It is vital that we just keep going with it. You've got to show them you're resilient and that you will push through this, even if it's uncomfortable. Nothing wrong with saying, I'm not comfortable in this format yet, but I'm getting there and I'm practicing, and it's not going to stop me from having an opportunity to talk to your organization. If you like the company, you like the job, ask for it. There's no place I'd rather be than working for your company. You could say that. You could say, I've interviewed in a lot of places over the years, and your company is my number one choice. I want to work for you. I just want you to know that. I'd be very honored to have the opportunity to serve you, and I know I can help you. So you want to get comfortable practicing this and know that you're not going to be perfect, and it's okay. But if you have a genuine tonality, because it's how you say it, not what you say, tonality, sincerity, comfort, integrity, right? And then communicating your competencies with some comfort and confidence, they're going to resonate with that. Like, I hope you know that even though I may make mistakes periodically, I care about you and I want you to be successful, and I want to hear how you succeeded and how this helped in some way, shape, or form. And even if it didn't, it's okay, because I'm not here to make this about me. I use my stories because they're easy off the top of my head. But I look forward to hearing, wow, I got through that and I did much better. And that's worth it, to be a little uncomfortable at times, right? So I hope this was helpful. I hope this is something that's going to be useful to you. You've got to just do it. Be honest, but don't be honest about personal stuff. Be honest about, I'm a little uncomfortable with this, but I'm working with it. But I do know my content. One of your other weaknesses could be, I am far more confident on my job than I am doing a virtual interview. People will laugh and know it's true. They'll relate to it, and it is true. Now, if you have questions, what we're going to be doing is Tuesday at noon, after this shows, after this airs, I will be live for you to answer questions from 12 to 12:30. Hope to see you there, and I hope you have a wonderful, blessed day.